Welcome to our functional forum of August. I'm Heidi. I'm with the Brain Health Clinic, along with our team and our co-owners, Fran, Bieganek, and Odishaw. We host these monthly forums every month, different topics. If you're on our email list, you'll get these if you're watching forum. If you're not on our email list, come and see me so that you keep getting our brain health newsletters. And we are thrilled to get to introduce and have guest speaking tonight, Josh Wert, who is with
English Rose.
he is the owner and CEO of English Rose, which does home care and more. And I'll let him introduce himself more. And then after he speaks, we'll have Hal Kaufman, who is with lowerdementiarisk.com. So super happy to welcome you both. Please stay at the end if you can. We'll try to keep this going and do some questions at the end too. So Josh, thank you so much.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. My name is Joshua Ward. I'm the owner and CEO of a company called English Rose. I'm going to tell you just like maybe 2 minutes about English Rose, which will explain how I became interested in brain health. And then I'll launch into the first half of the presentation, and then I'll hand it over to my associate, Hal Kaufman. Okay? So there's this company. So English Rose has been around for 27 years, since 1997, and we've been taking care of mostly seniors. And we do that really in two venues. We take care of seniors who are living in their own home, who are aging in place. That's our home care business. And then we have a division called English Rose Suites, where we take care of seniors who live with us, who need a residential solution. In our home care business, we have lots of different services. They kind of fall into 5 buckets. It can be as light as just helping out around the house, running errands, helping cleaning, things like that. The next level up is personal cares. So grooming, companionship, transportation, showering, really helping individuals be safe. Next up on our tier is nurses services. And so we have 6 full-time nurses on staff. Actually, not full-time. We have 6 nurses on staff, some full-time, some part-time, who take care of our seniors who are living in our homes, as well as our seniors who are living in their own homes, with a variety of different services, medication management and rehab. We got our founding, if that's the correct grammar, I'm not sure it is, but we started in the area of dementia. That's really our specialty. And so we do a lot of dementia education to families who have a loved one who's living with dementia, Alzheimer's, or any kind of form of dementia. And then we have an array of other services that fall into the last bucket, which is the other bucket. For example, if you have a friend or a grandparent or a mother or a grandfather that wants to go on a trip across the country and visit, let's say, their brother, sometimes they can use a companion for that travel, both the planning and the care and companionship. And so that's a service we offer. And the services we offer in this last bucket are offered through us, as well as a number of our partners. Next up, our point of differentiation is we got the best caregivers in the business. Okay, we're locally owned, and we got the best caregivers in the business. We hire the best. We get about 100 applications a month. We hire about 5. We fire 2 within the first 2 weeks because they don't make it through our training program. And we manage our talent. We provide them with a lot of training, way more than most companies, if not all other home care companies, and a lot of coaching and mentorship and a lot of performance management. Then we have our homes. So we have 6 single-family homes in Edina and Minnetonka, where individuals living with dementia live as a family. 6 residents per home with caregivers 24/7. And it's as far from an institutional memory care facility as you can imagine and as you can see. Our residents wake up when they want, they eat whatever they want. They're welcome family and friends into the home. They run errands if they like to go to the football game, go to the Timberwolves game. These are people with full dementia, still get to do all the activities they love doing, even though they have dementia when they're living at an English Rose suite. So it's really different than these big giant buildings going up everywhere on all the highways. So enough about English Rose. There's a lot of slides I'm going to skip in this presentation because it's kind of an hour presentation. I'm going to do it in 15 minutes. What we're here today to talk about is what can we do today to make sure that we reduce the chance of ourselves getting Alzheimer's or another form of dementia in the future. And so This is a chart. What you're seeing here is a chart of normal cognitive decline. Time is on the x-axis. Cognitive functioning is on the y-axis. And as you can see, of course, over time, your cognition goes down. I'm 56 years old. Mine's already going down. And that's normal. What dementia is when it takes a steep, sharp turn, and that's abnormal cognitive decline. It starts with something called mild cognitive impairment, MCI, and then it goes into full-blown dementia. I'm skipping. So we're kind of at a really exciting moment in the area of brain health and especially dementia, because 5 years ago, even, but definitely 10 years ago, I believed that dementia was just a function of aging. You know, what I used to say is, boy, they can replace a knee, they can replace a shoulder, they can put stents in. I mean, they can do it. My mom had her hip replaced. She was walking the next day. It's so amazing what they can do to keep the body going. I feel like it's going to be drive-through pretty soon. But I always said they don't have any ideas for what you can do for the brain. It's the gray matter just kind of wears out. That's what I told people. Okay, that's wrong. It is not a function of aging. We now know that. That's fact. That's science. Other people believed it was a function of genetics. Either I got it or I don't. My mom had it, my dad had it. And so there's nothing I can do because it's part of genetics, and that's not true. There is a correlation, of course, between aging and dementia. There is a correlation. There are correlations between certain genes and genetics and dementia. But the the third point is the most important point. You can do something about it. You can prevent it. And it's why you're all here. I think it's because it's a really interesting topic. We're all, at least in my generation, we're watching our parents. And even I have a friend, my best friend from high school, just was diagnosed at age 55 with early onset dementia. And so it's part of our lives, and we'd like to do everything we can to avoid it. It's a number one question that I get asked at English Rose. We kind of come in oftentimes and really bring relief to a lot of our families, and a lot of our families have a loved one with dementia, and that's the number one question I get asked once their loved one gets settled is, okay, what can I do to make sure that I don't get dementia? And that's what got me really interested in researching this topic, and now I'm on a brain health journey myself. And I'll tell you a little bit, a very high overview of the things you can do. We could do an hour session on each of these topics. Okay. We could do a day session on each of these topics. And in the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to fly through them for you at a very high level to set the landscape. And then I'm going to introduce my friend Hal. So there are there are lots of modifiable risk factors that you have control over that will influence whether the likelihood that you'll get dementia, as well as the severity of the dementia, that if you do get it. And they fall into these 6 buckets. Okay, and I drew a line because I'm today only going to talk about quickly one slide each on diet on the top 3, which are the 3 big ones. So if these are the 6 buckets, the top 3 are the most important. It's kind of an 80-20 rule, I would say. That's actually, don't quote me on that. I withdraw that statement. But they are the most important ones. Dietary nutrition, what you eat, your physical activity, interesting, but what you do with your body has a major impact on your brain functioning, and sleep. I'm going to say those are the top 3. As someone has pointed out, they've seen other lists, and just like your top 10 movies from the 1920s or whatever, like people can have different opinions, but these are oftentimes the top 3. Other really important buckets is stress management. There's a correlation between your stress in your life and your cognition. Cognitive engagement, so keeping the brain stimulated as you age and as people withdraw from the workforce, it's really important to stay active mentally, and there's lots of strategies to do that. That'll improve your cognition. And social connection, which is really interesting, I think. But you've probably heard this, but people, seniors especially who are isolated, have a much higher rate of developing dementia. So being social and staying connected to other people is a big correlation. So let me just check with my timing, okay? Because where am I at about? I just want to know because I want to leave Hal enough time. Perfect. Okay, we're gonna keep it at a high level, and that's great. Then I'm gonna add this slide and just spend 20 seconds on it. Dementia is caused physiologically by really 2 things. One is inflammation in your body. And so inflammation is what happens when your body's not perfect. Whether you get hurt in the arm or you have a virus, your body gets inflamed, and that's really good for you. But too much inflammation in your brain is one of the causes of dementia. And the other one is your vascular functioning, your blood flow to your brain. So all the strategies to increase your cognition and reduce the chance that you'll get dementia have to do with lowering inflammation and increasing blood flow to your brain. I just think that's kind of interesting, and so I took a minute to share it with you. So let's start with dietary nutrition. The statistics are kind of astounding. A lot of times in medicine, statistics that have a 10% change are a wow. The statistics when it comes to dementia are way beyond that. Brain health diet, so if you follow a diet that is healthy for your brain, can improve it to reduce your Alzheimer's risk by over 50%. It's an astounding statistic. My favorite statistic on this page, though, is the second one, which is you don't need to do it all. You can just do a little bit of it and get 35%. That's me. I can't do it all, but that gives me permission to do a little bit and still feel good about it. So what does a brain healthy diet look like? There's lots of versions of it. I needed to summarize it in just a couple bullet points, so this is Joshua's version of it. Okay? Let's start at the top and go down. Okay? Leafy green vegetables and other vegetables are the most important things for your brain to increase blood flow and reduce inflammation. Okay? And when it comes to leafy green vegetables, the Bib lettuce that has no flavor, that's basically just water, that's not the one that's the best. It's the crunchy ones. It's the ones like spinach and kale that are rough and have deeper green color to them. Then if you need a snack, it's nuts and berries. Nuts and berries are the go-to snack. And interestingly, there's a lot of people who benefit by not having gluten in their blood, in their digestive system. But actually, breads and grains are really good for your brain. So there might be reasons to avoid it for other reasons, but if you're solely interested in brain health, you'll have lots of whole grains in your diet. So let's just stop there for a minute. Basically, if these are kind of put into order, you're a vegetarian, right? And that's a true statement that for your brain, being a vegetarian is really, really healthy. 4 minutes left. I only have like 2 slides left, so we're perfect. And you can see how we can spend a lot of time on each of these slides and a lot of times on all of these. So next up is your meats. So the rule of thumb for meats is the less number of legs, the better it is for your brain. Okay? So fish, no legs, right? Chicken, 2 legs. And anything running around with 4 legs, like pigs and cows, you put that last on your list. Okay? And then I like to add olive oil, and I'm going to add the word avocados to there. I mean, some people believe you should just put olive oil on everything you eat, okay? Breakfast cereal, put olive oil on it, okay? And then in between your olive oil, glasses of olive oil you're drinking, eat avocados. Your food to avoid, you could guess the big one here is sugar. We know sugar is like the new smoking, right? I mean, they thought it was okay for you, and then they figured out, oh my God, it's killing us. That's sugar for us in our generation. I get a lot of questions about fasting and hydration. And so I'll just nip it in the bud. Fasting, the intermittent fasting, it's good for you and good for your brain. And hydration is really important for you. If you are dehydrated, your blood is flowing slower. There's lots of resources out there in all of these categories. And just let's move on to the last one, physical activity. What I got, 2 minutes left probably. So regular physical activities associated with a 30 to 40% reduction, reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. And I like the second bullet point here also, which is individuals with low muscle mass have a 2 to 3 times higher chance of developing dementia. So it's not just cardio, which is good for me because I hate cardio. And so on my brain health journey, and I'm on one, and if we have more time, I would share my narrative with you. But I am right now, like this year, all focused on muscle mass. And you can measure your muscle mass. There's now really easy ways to do that. And so I'm on a really rigorous heavy weight program now, and I've measured my muscle mass, and I'll check it every 3 months to grow my muscle mass. And as you age, I think a lot of people know you lose your muscle mass. And so you really got to lean into this heavy lifting if your goal is to minimize your chance of dementia. Sleep. This one has the coolest charts. If you remember from 10th or 11th grade science, there's different phases of sleep, right? They're called light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep. Light sleep should be about 50%. Deep sleep should be about 25%. And REM sleep should be about 25%. Okay? There's one phase here that cleans out the toxins from your brain, and it's deep sleep. And so monitoring your sleep's really important. They sell now tools. I mean, Apple Watches can do it, Fitbits can do it. I have an Aura ring that does it. And I don't wear it during the day. I just put it on to sleep so I can wake up in the morning and see how I slept the night before. This is what it should look like. And you can see the yellow is when you're awake, the green is the REM sleep, the light sleep is light blue, and the deep sleep is dark blue. And this is kind of what it should look like. Light's about half with about 25% REM and 25% deep. I'm going through a process right now where I'm getting no deep sleep. Okay, so I'll sleep for like 7 hours and I'll get 4 minutes of deep sleep. And I'm freaking out. Okay, I just got the ring. So this is now also a big part of my journey is to figure out what is going on. You would not believe how little deep sleep I get. I wake up every morning. I said to my wife, it doesn't matter what I eat. I mean, my brain is filling up with toxins. I am not getting deep sleep. So I'm on a journey to figure out how to make that change. And that's it. I'm gonna cut it there and pass it on to my friend Hal. What I want to mention before I bring him up is if you're interested in this topic, there is a plethora of podcasts, websites, books to read. You just say brain health once on social media, you'll be inundated, okay, by posting. There's so many resources out there. But all those resources are a little bit generic. What's really interesting is that everybody's path for brain health needs to be individual. What I need to do to improve my brain health, to go on my brain health journey, is going to be different than you, and different than you, and different than you. And so some people take a much deeper dive. And to do that, I'm going to introduce someone that could take you on that dive, and his name is Hal Kaufman.
And hello to everybody online. I think we have a handful, 5 or 10 people online. So my name is Hal Kaufman. Again, I am with a company called LowerDementiaRisk.com. We are all about lowering dementia risk. It's a good name. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing for that name, but you probably could have figured it out. The focus of the organization is on the bottom left corner, public speaking, which is why I'm here today. Education and coaching. If you need help figuring out, what should I be doing? Where should I even start? What am I comfortable doing? What can I afford to do? I can help you kind of figure those things out and point you in the right direction. And then I love writing. So I have a Substack. I don't know if anyone knows. Substack's a platform for writers. Some of you are familiar with it. I also have on the website lots of things that I've written. So I love deep thinking. It's good for my brain. Writing down, learning that way, and then sharing it with other people. So that's what I'm doing on my website. That's really the core of the business, the purpose of the business. You have my contact information here if you want to reach out. If we don't get all of your questions answered and you want to touch base, ask me a quick question or not a quick question, feel free to reach out. Email, phone, text, whatever you want. I'm happy to chat and figure out how to get you what you need, whatever that may be. So I'm going to share some very personal information with you. I hope that's okay. Josh, purchased this business, English Rose Sweets, and became very passionate and knowledgeable about the topic of dementia care, and how to prevent dementia. I sort of flipped that around. I became very passionate about learning about avoiding dementia, and then ended up this year creating the business. So I want to share with you a little bit about my journey, my personal path, my personal brain health journey path. So you just know kind of where I'm coming from, what I've done, which I'm hoping will help you ask questions later at the end. So in the bottom left corner is it's an old picture of me. I'm sure I still look exactly the same. And then my parents, Sheila and Stuart, are there. My mom and dad both were diagnosed with dementia. So my mom had dementia, was diagnosed in 2002, and then passed away 10 years later. And my dad was diagnosed the year before my mom passed away, and he died 8 years after that. So really for 18 years, I was going to some doctor's appointments with them and trying to help the best I could and kind of going through that journey with them. It's not a great journey. How many of you have had parents, if you don't mind raising your hand? Yeah. So we're aligned. I mean, we had this journey and now we're like, maybe how do I care for them, which is where Josh comes in, and how do I care for myself? I don't want to be in Josh's home. No offense to Josh's homes. Yep, right. That is true. And both my parents ended up in homes that were very similar to Josh's, and they're really incredible. So for 18 years, I was going through this experience with my parents. I was going to doctor's appointments at the Mayo Clinic. They were part of a research study at the Mayo Clinic. So I was going to doctor's appointments there, and really what I heard over and over again is, you need to just plan for the future. Plan for your next steps. There's nothing you can do. This is what's going to happen. We'll give you a pill. It might slow it down in the beginning a little bit, but otherwise, figure out where you're going to live next. When you get to this point, you're going to want to be in this kind of place, get your affairs in order kind of stuff. That was the message I heard for 18 years from even the Mayo Clinic and others. Nothing against them. They were phenomenal for my parents. And the planning was really key. But the message I took away was there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. And then I saw that with my parents over and over again. So that was tough. The day after my dad died, I just figured out kind of for the first time, oh, crap, this could hit me. Like for the 18 years, I was sort of helping them and whatever. I had young kids, I had a business I was running, lots of different things going on. After he died and I didn't have my parents anymore, I thought for the first time, I'm going to get this. And that was a weight on my shoulders, not a heavy weight. I wasn't depressed. I don't think. I functioned fine in life, but it was a little pressure on my shoulders that I felt literally every single day. And some of you may have similar feelings, and I certainly empathize with that. So I had that for 5 years after the 18 years. But then in January of 2023, something changed. Sorry, these slides are a little messed up on these computers. So in January of 2023, I listened to a podcast from Peter Attia. Does anyone know who Peter Attia is? Ever hear? A handful of you. Okay. Peter Attia is a longevity expert, really focuses on how to help people be really strong and healthy the last decade of their life, whatever decade that is, so they can do the things they want to do. And it's not this slow decline, and right at the end, they're really sick, and then you're in the hospital forever, and they're barely keeping you alive. That's not what he's after. Ideally, he would want, maybe a slight decline, and then right at the end, boom, kind of a cliff. That's kind of how we want to die. We want to be as healthy and living and doing the things and playing with the grandchildren or whatever for as long as we possibly can. So if you haven't heard of Peter Attia, check him out. He's got a podcast called The Drive. If you are into podcasts, he's got a great book called Outlive. I highly recommend getting that book. The reason I'm sharing that information with you is because he is the first person that said you can impact the outcome when it comes to dementia. Genetics plays a role, but it doesn't control everything. I had for 18 plus 5 years, 23 years, never heard anything like that. That was incredibly empowering, coming from a place of helplessness and hopelessness. So I was all over Peter Attia. I'm a big Peter Attia fan. And his hammer, if you will, is really around exercise. So I started doing a lot of cardio, zone 2, zone 5, which is just different intensity levels. I started doing resistance training, which is weightlifting, all that's good for your metabolic health, which is good for your brain health. And it's good for a whole bunch of other things. And that's one of the things I learned, focusing on brain health. Most of the things we would do for brain health is good for your health, period. And that's really important. It's not just, your body's a system. Everything's interconnected. So I was doing that for, 6 or so months. And then I decided I wanted to do more. There's all these indicators, things I was reading that, if you have, if you're vitamin D deficient or your B vitamins are an issue or your hormones aren't right, these are all risk factors for dementia. So there were some companies that I found that focus on brain health and could do a very broad and deep panel of blood work. So I could get tested on a whole bunch of stuff to see where was I not optimal or even in the normal range of things. So we did initial cognitive tests and blood tests, and then I implemented a bunch of interventions. I started doing different exercises. I started eating slightly differently. I took some supplements, a couple of prescriptions that I needed, it turned out, and then we retested. And then in 2025 is when I started the company Lower Dementia Risk. So here are some of my tests. You can't see any of this. I don't want you to necessarily, I don't care. You can read it. We'll send you the slides if you want. But on the left-hand side, there are 30 blood tests. That's not even all of them. I went in for a blood test. There were like 16 vials of blood for all the blood tests I took. All at once. It felt fine. It's not an issue. But lots of things to test. And then I did some cognitive tests. And then, there's also information about just sort of other risk factors in your life. If you smoke, if you drink, your education level, if you have hearing impairment, vision impairment, all of these things can increase your risk of dementia. And I'm all about lowering my risk of dementia. So I looked at all of those things too. And as Josh said, my journey is going to be different than your journey. We all are at different points. We all have different biological factors at play. So I want to share with you the things that jumped out when I did all of this stuff, just so you can get an example of what it could be like. Yours is going to be different. This is, these are my focus areas. Personalized preventative medicine is the key here. And I'll tell you, going to your regular doctor to do this kind of stuff is going to be a challenge. Sounds like it's a challenge because, they have 10, 20 minutes with you. They're focused on what's ailing you. Preventative medicine just isn't a part of our ecosystem when it comes to healthcare. So personalized preventive medicine, you really need to be a strong advocate for yourself or have someone who's going to help advocate for you. That's what it took for me, but it's much easier. Even when I did this 2 years ago, it's much easier now to do a lot of this stuff. All these blood tests, you can find organizations online that'll do a great job. So it's really nice. But here, I'm just going to go very quickly on some of my things. I already talked about exercise. I work out all the time, almost every day. It's just what I do. I hate it. I feel good after, but I don't get that feedback loop that's like, oh, you feel good and you should do it again. I still don't want to do it, but I do it. Nutrition, I eat pretty healthy. I did when I started, but cutting down sugar, as Josh talked about, is inflammation. Increasing my fiber has really brought down my LDL, which helps the cholesterol numbers and situation, and that's really good. I need to eat more vegetables, which is tied to fiber. I still need to eat more vegetables. I'm just talking here, and that doesn't leave the room. And then upping my protein. I'm trying to build muscle mass just like Josh, and protein is super important. I know it's going to be harder and harder to maintain my muscle mass. I need to build it now. Stress, I've started doing mindfulness every morning, almost every morning. Brain stimulation, I'm in a band. I played drums when I was in high school, loved it. 30 years later, for this reason, I picked it up again. Great for social, just great for my brain, just using a musical aspect, the other side of my brain, if you will. And then I love writing, so I told you about the writing already. I also bought an Oura ring. Turns out I don't have any sleep problems. I returned the Oura ring. It was great. Within 30 days, it's like, yeah, I'm fine. So that one less thing I had to deal with. I did some genetic testing. APOE, has anyone heard of APOE? APOE is one of the most common genetic tests to measure your Alzheimer's specific risk. It won't tell you whether or not you're going to get it, but it'll tell you to some degree how much at risk you are on a scale, if you will. So I struggled with even wanting to know that information. I'm happy to talk about that if you ask questions about that. MTHFR isn't what it might look like, but it's just another marker of. It's actually a genetic marker that told me that I have trouble processing B vitamins. So I have to use a methylated B vitamin. And you'll see that in the biomarkers. The methylated B vitamin helps me lower my homocysteine, which is a marker of inflammation. So again, trying to get blood flow, which is why we work out, do other things, trying to lower inflammation, all of that is key. That's sort of the theme around all this. My uric acid, also an inflammatory marker, was high. Vitamin D was low, magnesium was low, my omegas were a little low, my hormones were low. I had to deal with hormones. So you think of hormones in certain categories. For me, it was affecting my workouts. It was affecting building muscle mass. I didn't realize how neuroprotective hormones are. They are for men and women. So managing that is super important. So the deficiencies in these biomarkers that I had measured led to supplements, a handful of supplements and a couple of prescriptions. And that's it, except you can't see what I really want to show on the slide. So I'm going to come back here. Reduce your risk of dementia while feeling better and improving your health in the short term. I'm like an insurance company. I'm trying to decrease my risk long term, 20, 30 years from now. I don't know if I will. Hopefully I don't get dementia, or it's later, or it's less severe, or it progresses more slowly, or whatever. But I feel better today than I did 6 months ago, than I did 18 months ago when I started this. So if you don't exercise or don't eat well, I guarantee you are going to feel better in the short term, even if it has nothing to do with your dementia risk 30 years from now or 20 years from now. I think it will, but we don't know for sure. But just knowing that you're going to feel better and it's good for you in the short term is frankly reason enough. But I have that long-term view too, and I'm sure some of you, based on what you said earlier, also do. That is my time. Thank you so much for listening, and write down your questions.
Okay. So, pardon me, as I shift gears from behind the camera to in front of the camera. So one of the things we would like to have is a volunteer, somebody who's willing to have Adam cap them up and let all of us see the hamster on the wheel. We're going to get to see your EEG up on the screen tonight. Get to do some neurofeedback, fly a plane with your brain, super cool. You're going to come out of this with some messy hair. So I just want to set expectations. But who would like to be our volunteer? Wonderful. Thank you. I see a tentative hand. So we'll give you a cue when it's time to come over and join Adam, and then away we go. So thank you for that. All right, and thank you, guys. Appreciate everything you added tonight. I can clearly see where each of you could do an hour. Maybe we should make the opportunity to do that and get together and do a larger presentation so we can hear all of the good stuff that you had to share with us that we had to kind of race through. It is going to allow me to also cut out some of mine because you guys covered some of the things that I was going to cover. So thank you for that. Fran, thanks you for that. So one of the questions that we always get around what we do is there research? And the answer is yes. There is mountains of research. Like what we do has been around for at least 60 years. The amount of research that's being done is expanding every day. We had the decade of the brain a few decades ago, and it really hasn't stopped. I mean, like the amount of research that's being done is amazing. You can see right there, if we just look at electrical stimulation, if you wanted to sift through the 3.5 million studies, that would take you a while. If we wanted to, there we go. If we go a little bit more specifically into some of the research that's on the things that we do around generally, say, bioelectric medicine, more specifically neurotherapy, you can see that there's a large number of studies in each of those categories. You guys gracefully went through all of that. So there's a quote here from Dr. Dale Bredesen with the 36 holes in the roof. Basically what he has talked about in all of his work through the Bredesen protocol, you heard it here tonight already. I'll just reinforce that, which is dementia is a complex syndrome. It is not a single condition. It's not a single disease. We have one word for it. Allopathic medicine has been working hard to create a pill that would solve it. But again, practical because it is a decades-long multi-system breakdown that needs a repair to all of those systems, or at least as many of them. So as Dr. Bredesen says, if you had 36 holes in your roof, would you be happy if somebody patched 3 of them? No, really, you wouldn't really be happy if they patched 35 of them because you'd still have water in your house and that would be a problem. So it's very similar in our approach to dementia, is we want to do our best to identify where the holes are and what are the things for any one individual that are gonna shore up those holes. So my goal tonight is to show you some of those 36 holes. We're going to get a little deep in the weeds in some physiology, but I'm not going to drag you through it. I believe you have handouts. So that was my way of not having to drag you through it, is to just give it to you. I will say that in preparing for this, I produced about 80 pages of notes. So that's what you could have been in for, but Fran said no. So this is what you're going to get. But what I will do, I think, is I'm going to kind of morph that into a little bit of an ebook, and we'll send it out to everybody who's here so that you can see, have an opportunity to not read all that I had to say about this. So some things we want to take a look at is, so these are some more data that, again, the guys already covered amply, which is just, there's a long ramp up to this disease. It starts probably 30 years before a symptom presents. So here, maybe you can see this. It's a very tiny graphic, but it's basically talking about the major systems of the body. And that this is a cycle. As one system starts to break down, it leads to breakdown in another system, and that cycle starts to feed itself. And this is the problem. This is what we have ended up with over those years, is just a multi-system degeneration that turns into kind of the degeneration of physiological networks that result in this thing that we call dementia. So pulling out a handful of these key factors that relate to what we do in terms of neurotherapy, or again, kind of generally bioelectric medicine. what are the things that bioelectric medicine affects in terms of brain health, brain function, and brain physiology? And that's what we're going to run through at a really quick pace, because I want you to kind of just get in your mind just the idea that there are multiple systems that are going sideways in dementia. Cognitive decline, the early sign when it's just the degenerative process that we don't give a name to, we just call it aging. And that bioelectric medicine has an approach for every one of these, right? I think that's the key to come out of this with. So if we look at, we probably all have heard about amyloid plaque and tau tangles, right? So this is a little bit closer towards the end than in the beginning. But part of the way we get there is insulin resistance, right? So dementia being called type 3 diabetes, right? So we've heard a lot about the importance of sugar. That's part of why. So as we age, our bodies handle sugar less well, just naturally, but then add to that a degenerative process, the beginning of insulin resistance, and then there's a whole cascade of physiological problems that come from that. So we go to vasculature. So again, neural inflammation can cause vascular issues. The decrease in mitochondrial activity can lead to vascular issues. So what do we have in vascular issues? We have vessels that start to harden. They become brittle. They become leaky. When blood vessels leak, particularly in the brain, they let the constituents that should be inside the vasculature outside the vasculature get extravascular space, and that can lead to neural inflammation. So you can see there, so you have inflammation affecting the circulation, the health of the arteries. As the health of the arteries deteriorates, they become leaky. You get inflammation, around and around it goes. The blood-brain barrier, as that starts to break down, then you also have things that are outside the brain, not just in the circulatory system. It could be in the lymphatic system. It could be in the dural system that can begin to start to cross the blood-brain barrier. Also can start to drive inflammation. So a little note there, the beginning, the breakdown of microglial cells. So microglial cells are kind of the housekeeper of the brain. They keep neurons happy. When they eat up amyloid plaque, so they help to get rid of amyloid plaque. Part of what they excrete are the building blocks of myelin. So myelin keeps our nerves covered to help conduction go faster. So part of the process is as microglial stop doing what they're doing, they don't eat as much of the amyloid plaque that builds up. They don't produce as much of the precursors to amyloid, or myelin, so then that starts to break down. And again, you've got another cycle that's going to start driving itself and lead towards breakdown. So we have, again, sleep. So we heard about sleep tonight. Sleep is major. We spend a lot of time on sleep. We have a whole sleep program, which we won't get to tonight, but it is, we do a functional forum just on sleep, so we can really focus on everything we do there. But, this idea that as you age, your sleep gets worse, that there's a certain natural part of what we just take as natural, but then add in these processes where we have dysregulation in circulation, in digestion, in the hormone system, in thermal regulation, then all of those can throw sleep off, circadian rhythm gets off, starts to affect our sleep. When we don't sleep, we don't get our deep sleep, doesn't fire up the lymphatic system, so we don't clear out the catabolic materials from the brain. Those are going to lead to a number of toxic effects, again, leading to neuroinflammation, among other things. So hopefully you're getting the sense, right? That there's cycle within a cycle within a cycle, and they drive each other until there becomes more and more momentum towards degenerative process. So there is, again, no single linchpin that could be tweaked that would change all of that. So one of the things that I've mentioned a little bit, but really deserves a lot of attention is mitochondria. So mitochondria are often thought of the powerhouse of the cell, produce ATP, produce the energy. That's true. But more recent research tells us that mitochondria actually have a more important function, which is they're part of information communication. So we think of neurons in the brain doing the primary communication, or even peripheral nerves in the body doing the communication. Turns out that mitochondria are also a communication network. So for example, in the brain, when one part of the brain is firing and it's going to start to access another part of the brain, ahead of that, the mitochondria are already signaling to that area that activity is coming to ramp up metabolism to be ready when that area is called on to do its job. So if the mitochondria aren't doing their job in producing energy, but more importantly, they're not doing their job in information communication, they're not prepping that brain region to be ready for the computational demand that's coming its way. So they're not going to have the energy, they're not going to have the blood flow, and they're not going to be warmed up and ready to go. So again, we have a multi-system breakdown. So one of the things that happens with mitochondria is we lose probably 40% of our mitochondria by the time we hit age 50. Just natural, right? They just tend to die off. One of the comments about exercise, the value of exercise, why build lean muscle mass, high in mitochondria. So you're actually forcing your body to produce more mitochondria, and exercise helps keep the mitochondria in tip-top shape. So lean muscle mass is doing two things for you just around mitochondria. So again, long list of things that mitochondria do for us. So you can imagine if we just start losing them, just natural aging, we start losing them. And then we have things like inflammation that are interfering with mitochondrial function. If we have buildup of reactive oxygen species, causing oxidative stress that cuts down on mitochondria function. Again, we start to build a long list of things that are interfering with the fewer mitochondria we have in doing their job well. Okay, so now I want to move into a little bit. So what can we do about that? So try and give you the horror story, and now what can we do about it? So this is a great slide. This comes from MIT, Earl Miller, amazing work that they're doing there. And what it's telling us is that there's a loop that we can access at multiple points. So the little green spiky thing over there, so it's called local field potential. So brain waves. So when you have lots and lots of neurons firing in patterns and you just have your brain doing what your brain does, it creates this local field potential, which are these traveling waves, brain waves. That's what we're going to see later when we see the EEG up on the screen. You're going to see the local field potential. Right? So that has an impact on local or kind of individual or small clusters of neurons. Right? So our brain waves can change how individual neurons fire. But further than that, it can reach down all the way to the cellular level. So even within the cell, so the molecules that are within a cell, brain waves can affect all the way down to the molecular level within the cell. Right? So from changing brain waves, we can change the cellular activity in our body. Right? And this is a well-known link. You can see it up here, what they call cytoelectric coupling to go with phaptic coupling. And so we can affect, we can address cells, so changing physiology. So that might be diet, exercise, having a physiological approach. And that's going to work up this chain. That's going to affect how neurons fire are going to affect brain waves. So this is a cycle. We can enter at different points. Where we do kind of in the brain clinic is we primarily access that through brain waves. But we can also go with physiology through, say, neurostimulation, photobiomodulation. We can affect cell physiology and know that that goes up the link to brain waves. Right? So there's a number of access points that we have. Okay, so it looks like we're not going to be able to get the video to come through the system. So I'm not going to have the opportunity for you to hear this wonderful research from these folks at Alzheimer's UK. Do amazing research on dementia. It's a multidisciplinary interactive series of research facilities that do a great job on public education, taking their research and bringing it to the public. They've got a great pipeline to do that. So there's two things in this the reason that I show the clip is they're talking about, you can see a little bit of it on the screen there, gamma oscillations. So this is using photic entrainment. So the device we have here is actually, they did the research on the audiovisual entrainment device. So that's partly why I like to show the clip. It's the device we use, being used in some high-end research. And what it shows is this is echoing some of the results from the MIT research showing that 40 hertz stimulation lowered amyloid plaque in the brain. So what they showed here was a bit of the methodology. And they found by using pulsed light through the eyes at 40 hertz, you could change what's called the morphology of the microglial cells. So part of what happens in the dementia process is the microglial cells. So these are, again, the housekeepers of the brain. They keep neurons healthy. They produce myelin to keep the nerves coated. They change shape. They kind of clump down into like they collapse on themselves, and they actually kind of reverse their function. Instead of pruning dying neurons and supporting autophagy, clearing out dying tissue, they start to attack healthy living tissue. So they're working against us, but they're working slowly. They're sluggish. They're slow, but what they do is bad. So not helpful. But just by doing the 40 hertz stimulation, we're able to reverse that, change their morphology, their shape, and along with that, their function, and get them back to doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that's all great research to support the value of audiovisual entrainment for brain health. One of the pieces that I like to, just so that I can mock these guys, but you're not going to be able to join me in mocking them, is having shown this effect in their research and validated it, they then go on to say that their goal is to produce a pharmaceutical that can produce that same effect. And I think you've got a device that costs $600 that you buy once, has no side effects, and it creates the effect you want. But instead, you're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to produce a pharmaceutical that probably won't work as well and will have terrible side effects. A little frustrating. They could have spent that money promoting the use of audiovisual entrainment. So just to say, in the clinic, we've taken that idea, that research, again, this is very cutting edge neurostimulation, where we're able to take a gamma frequency, this is a brainwave, nested inside of a theta frequency, and drive a theta gamma coupled wave into specific brain regions. So where does this come out for helpful? One of the things that we hear most for people in mild cognitive decline and certainly into dementia is short-term memory. Short-term memory primarily runs on theta waves, but it has a gamma burst in the middle of it. So our treatments have not been as effective as we had hoped up to this point, but now we're able to layer in that combined wave, and the results are significantly better. So the ability to improve a specific function like short-term memory that has become much more accessible to us. Photobiomodulation. So here we go. If we run down this list, it's a list that matches, as we came through the first few slides, of the pathologies. So ion channel pathologies, insulin resistance, neural inflammation, all of those are being directly impacted through the use of transcranial near-infrared light. So for us, we do that in the clinic one way. For our at-home treatment, we use the helmets that are at the back. So again, if you have time afterwards, do a little near-infrared treatment, good for your brain. But there's about 35 benefits that come from near-infrared light, and they all have application in the neurodegenerative process. So near-infrared light, incredibly helpful for addressing many of those 36 holes that we want to get to. We can get to many of them through near-infrared light. So it goes on even more. So we talked about neural inflammation. Fantastic. Is one of the second on the list of benefits of near-infrared light is neural inflammation. Number one is mitochondria, increasing mitochondrial activity. So more ATP production, but we restore their ability to do information processing. So audiovisual entrainment. So again, that's the flickering light. We talked about the 40 hertz, its ability to help clear amyloid plaque, but long list of benefits from audiovisual entrainment that, again, address many of those things on our list of pathologies. So it's another tool. I like to think of audiovisual entrainment as affecting brain function more than brain physiology. It talks the language of the brain. So we, early on when we're treating people, we can get changes in brain function in 1 day, 1 week. Very early on, people will start to notice improved sleep, improved mood, improved memory, improved cognition, feel more engaged and participating, more likely to get up and exercise. So a lot of benefits come very quickly with audiovisual entrainment. With the helmet and the near-infrared light, you're looking at weeks to months, so a longer timeline. So why do we layer in treatment with 3 devices? You see the picture there. Nancy, she's using the helmet, the audiovisual entrainment, and the nasal laser, all ways of addressing those 36 holes. How do we put nutrients into the brain and change brain function and brain physiology across multiple dimensions at one time? This is how we do it. So a quick note about a case study, and I should probably ask Heidi, how am I doing the whole, oh goodness. Yes, you should have been, yep, could have used a cue Where's the hook? Okay, so just a couple quick. So case study. This is quick. This is Joyce is new into treatment. So Joyce did Bredesen protocol for 3 years. So she did very sincerely committed to the program. Diet, lifestyle, exercise, supplements. She did all of that at scale. And they saw very little change. They thought maybe it slowed her progress. We brought in the bioelectric medicines and we got her on the helmet, the audiovisual entrainment, the nasal laser. Within the first week, they were beginning to see signs. By week 2, you can see here her sleep had improved. She was having incontinence issues. Those have gone away. She's more active, more engaged. Her conversation, like her vocabulary, her ability to carry on a conversation has expanded. So her husband, her children are able to interact with her much more. She's asking now to do things as opposed to really before this, she was fairly inert, conversational in a small way if you approached her, but she didn't engage the outside world. But now she's active and engaged and asking to do things. And we're early on. We'll more to see. This is near and dear to my heart. So Barb, the wife's been under care for probably a little over 3 years. And when I started with her, she had her dementia diagnosis for about 5 years. She had been fairly non-functioning for most of those years. Her day was be helped out of bed in the morning, downstairs, sit in a chair, at the end of the day, be helped back to bed. That was pretty much her day to day. She had full-time care. And you can see here in the comments that very quickly, within the first few weeks, we started to see change. By the first month, her husband was reporting that she was getting up on her own, coming downstairs, first coming downstairs to have breakfast, then coming downstairs to make breakfast, and then coming downstairs to make breakfast, clean the kitchen, start doing housework, things she had not done for 5 years. It goes on. She starts driving, golfing, playing cards with her girlfriends again, going to the kids' hockey games. One of the big moments was he actually let her drive to the hockey game and back again, which she managed to do completely without question or confusion. He was comfortable enough, he fell asleep in the passenger seat. So it's a sign of how he was feeling. And probably one of the biggest moments was when he reached out to tell me that they had gone on a date and they went out and she ordered on her own. After that, she wanted to go for dessert. After that, on the way home, she said, can we stop at a friend's place that from her side she hadn't seen in a long time. She had seen them, she just wasn't there when they came to visit. But for her, she wanted to go visit people that she hadn't seen in many years. And it's just been an absolutely heartwarming experience. Her husband is kind enough to text me on a regular basis and just share how much this means to him, how much it means to his children, and how much it means to their grandchildren. It was an absolutely amazing story. So I'm going to turn this over to Fran.
Somebody utilizing neurofeedback. One of the, we don't often, when we work with people with dementia, we don't often do neurofeedback. And in fact, oftentimes we're doing more of kind of the photobiomodulation, the audiovisual entrainment that Guy was talking about. So many times that's just a kind of an at-home treatment. There are times when, based on the assessment that we do with the quantitative EEG, it's the brain mapping that we do, it might indicate to us that there could be some good value in doing the neurofeedback, and then we would certainly do that. But I want you to think about this. We've been talking about cognitive decline, dementia, but Josh and Hal were also talking about that idea of prevention, right? And so while we have treatments that we use for people who are already kind of experiencing some kind of cognitive decline, we also encourage people to keep their brains healthy. And that's what we do in the Brain Health Clinic every day, day in and day out. What we're doing is working with people to help them optimize their brain functioning, no matter what stage of life they are in. This is what we're seeing right now is Michelle's brain, right? Are we on, Adam? Yes, okay. And so what you can see here, each one of those lines is a line of brainwave activity, right? That's her EEG that we're seeing up there. They correspond with the little sensors that you see on her cap. Over on the right-hand side is something that we call head maps. And what that can do, it's split up. You probably can't see it, but there's delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta there. So we don't have a gamma head map on there, but we do pay attention to gamma. But that's going to tell us, just give us a kind of quick snapshot of whether or not there might be some kind of dysregulation happening in kind of in real time in those different brainwave frequencies. So green is kind of neurotypical. So right now, what's happening is Michelle's brainwave activity is getting fed into a computer that has a database of normative brains, so brains that don't have a lot of dysregulation. And typically it would be normed for your sex and your age, but we just pulled somebody else's for the sake because we haven't mapped your brain yet. And then that's it's kind of showing us when there is some kinds of excess activity happening. So anything that's kind of the warm or hot colors, that's too much. Anything that's the cooler colors, like the greens, the blues, that's too little of that particular frequency in that area of the brain in this present moment. This is normal to have some of that. So I just want to say that to you. That just because it's flashing some colors doesn't necessarily mean a lot of anything, right? But this is a piece that we pay attention to a lot. And then, Adam, are you going to flip it and show us a little neurofeedback? So when we do neurofeedback, this is what we're watching all of the time while the person is training. So we can see in real time and then be responsive in our training based on that. So Adam's going to pull up a training so that you can just get a feel for what neurofeedback looks like when we're working with a client. And then Michelle, I'll be interested to have you share just a little bit about your sense of it once you've had a chance to kind of do it a little bit. So we are going to train her brain. That's the goal of neurofeedback. It's operantly conditioning the brain to behave more like that neurotypical database, right? And so we use this video game, we call it AIR, it's called AIR, and it's got a target on the screen and it's got flying objects. And the goal of the game itself is to have the flying object go through the target. When it goes through, there's a flipping of the flying object. So there's a visual stimulus and there's a swishing sound, which you won't be able to hear in here, but that's an auditory stimulus. Those stimuli are rewarding for the brain, not for the mind. We're not training Michelle's mind, we're training Michelle's brain. And so when brains get stimulus, they want more of it. And so we all know this. We've either had puppies or babies or kitties. And so we know if you want them to do it, you just reward whatever you want them to do, and they're more likely to do it, right? So it's that process of engaging in that. So Michelle is what Adam is instructing Michelle to do, I think. Did you tell her to look at the screen over there? Yeah. Her job while we're training is to sit and be present with her, like her brain is her best friend and she's watching her best friend play a video game, right? And so there you go. So visual of her, she's getting that visual feedback that is then going to reinforce her brain, and it's going to be more likely to do that piece that we want it to do. Thank you. And so she's just going to sit there. So like people train from usually by when we get them going, like 40 minutes at a time, where this is their job, is to sit here and stay as present as possible while their brain is playing this video game. So Adam is working, I think, on pulling up. Yes. So there we go. Perfect. So what Michelle sees when she's training is the screen with the flying object and all of that, right? What we're seeing on the practitioner side of things is the other screen. That's okay. Again, you can see the EEG and the head maps up there, right? So we can keep an eye on that. And then down below, let me see if I can get this to, oh, that's right. Down below, you see the graph on the very bottom on the left side that looks like it's got just a bunch of color in it. Those are actually metrics of dysregulation in this particular brain network that we're training. Well, Adam, can you tell me how many 5 metrics of dysregulation in this particular network? So that's a good amount of dysregulation that we're going to work on training. And then you'll notice the red line that is there by the metrics. Adam, can you put your cursor on the red line for just a second? Yeah, thank you. That's our training threshold. So it's a certain amount of standard deviations above the norm, right? And so that's what we work on doing, is regulating the brain by bringing that down, right? That's a regulating so that the dysregulation, which is at, what's that at right now? I can't see. 3.5. Okay. So that's a pretty good training threshold actually, but so we might, work on training that down closer. And that's the process that's happening with neurofeedback. As the brain starts to regulate, which we get to see every day when we're doing the training, at some point in time, the client will start reporting progress, like subjective things, like I'm better able to focus. I'm able to make decisions. I had an executive who came in because she felt like she was losing. She literally said, I feel like I'm losing what I had. And she was having a difficult time with memory and recall. She was having a hard time making decisions, and that was all creating anxiety. And she said, I don't know if it's chicken or egg, but it's all really horrible for me right now. Really high level executive came in, trained with us, and just had a wonderful success, right? Where she got back to one of the quotes from her during a session, I think it was about 20 sessions in maybe, and she said, I'm back to being a really good executive, a leader in making decisions, that sort of thing. And she was just super excited about it. This is the process that somebody would go through. Michelle, do you care to share just what it's like to be doing this? Like not in front of, I know, but just what's it feel like on your end?
Catches anything or anything else and
Yeah,
moves from it rapid.
good. Yeah. So what Michelle is saying is that she can be kind of just really focused, and it looks like that plane is flying right to the target, and then something sort of happens close to the end, right? And a lot of times, what that is like brains get fatigued, just like when you work out, you get fatigued, right? Brains get fatigued when they work out too, and so sometimes they have a difficult time maintaining attention, which is part of what we're training as well. Sometimes people think it's because they're moving their head or they move their eyes and blink. That really isn't what's happening here. But it is to say that that brain sort of along the way kind of moves away from doing what the database does, right? What the normative database, how it behaves. What else? I think that's probably all I need to share with you about the neurofeedback process. Um, does anybody have any questions about it? Oh, Heidi, we've got 5 minutes. Okay, so let's do this. Any questions about the neurofeedback process, and then we'll move to kind of general questions for Guy, me, Hal, Josh. Okay, so let's jump past the neurofeedback. Any other questions that you might have for Josh, for Hal? Any comments?
My wife said to me, why don't you try not taking your sleeping pill? Which to me is like caused anxiety right there. I haven't taken it in 2 nights. Okay. And I'm getting like I'm over 15% deep sleep. And so now we're diving down that rabbit hole. I'm up for 3 hours because I was using it to fall asleep. So I'm getting much less sleep. I'm not getting my 7 hours of sleep, which is really important. But the percentage of sleep that is deep is much higher. So it's really I find the whole sleep thing really interesting. I have a lot more research to do to figure out how to bring this in line. Because you guys are like, we can help you.
Yes, we can. So, great question, Betty Jo. Thank you. What we like to use is a wearable EEG sleep tracker so that we can actually get EEG data. The guys had mentioned Oura Ring, Fitbit, Apple Watch, all of those. And those are fine, but they're using movement, they're using heart rate, they might be using temperature as proxies for what your brain is doing. And what we say is like, why go through all of the fancy algorithms to guess a heart rate of whatever means whatever part of the sleep cycle? Is just measure the brain directly. So we know the mix of brain waves and what's going on. It also does heart rate, sleep position, movement, a number of factors that you would pick up from peripheral device. It just also brings the EEG. So that's our preferred method, is to look at that. And then when we do an intervention, we'll have a person continue to wear that so we can see how we're changing the sleep cycle. Are we changing deep sleep in the first cycle, but not the second cycle? Are we changing the first and second, but not the third? We anticipate each cycle having less deep sleep in it, but you should still get 3 cycles of deep sleep in a night. And so that's what we want to track. How much REM, how much light, how much deep, when, all of those kinds of things. And the EEG wearable allows us to do it.
Signing up for it. Where did I have all the blood tests done? So I found there are a couple companies that focus on brain health. I used a company called A Mind for All Seasons. Dale Bredesen, who Guy mentioned, has a company called Apollo Health, right? And then I think there's maybe 1 or 2 others. And then even online, I get served Facebook ads all the time for something called Function Health. And they'll do, for a couple $100, $500 maybe for a year, twice a year, very in-depth panels, not just on brain health, but a whole bunch of other things as well. So it's becoming easier and easier. I mean, even again, when I started this a year and a half ago or whenever it was, I had to search out these companies, research them, figure out who I was comfortable working with. Now there's just stuff you can sign up for online and do. And then you can take that information and go to your doctor and have a conversation. As I maybe alluded to before, your doctors aren't necessarily, don't have the time or wherewithal to deal with a lot of this stuff. But even Function Health that you purchase online, you can then have conversations with their physicians or medical professionals to understand what the data means, what you should do about it. But Apollo Health, A Mind for All Seasons, are at least 2, you might know others, but 2 other great organizations that have they'll do all the testing and give you a whole huge report, talk to you every week if you want to talk every week. I mean, a lot of great support.
Sleep and the AVEs. I can't believe we didn't talk about the AVE and sleep. So that is a game changer when it comes to interventions for sleep. And I think that it is like there's oftentimes people don't realize that they don't have good quality sleep. You understand if you have insomnia or difficulty falling asleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep. But a lot of people have problems with quality of sleep. That's part of what Josh was talking about, alluding to that. The AVE is just this magical device that can work really well. I remember when we first got these in the clinic, I took one home because if we're going to ask people to use it, I figured I probably should use it too. And then I used it I tried it on sleep. I didn't think I had any sleep issues, but I thought I'll see what this is like if I'm going to have people do this. First night, didn't notice anything. The second night, I remembered coming back into the clinic in the morning and I said to Guy, the weirdest thing that happened last night. It's like I fell asleep and the next thing I knew it was morning and I don't know what happened in between. And I remember him looking at me and saying, "You mean you slept?" And I was like, "That's sleep." And I had no idea like that, and it makes sense now. You spend years waking up in the middle of the night to wonder if your kids are home or not and all that kind of thing. And so, of course, that pattern was there. But I would encourage all of you to take a peek at the AVEs. We've got some out here. Just give them a run just to see. And then, go to our website, go to our YouTube site, do a little looking into it a little bit more, and then really consider it as a really positive sleep additive for you. Other question?
Just wanted to speak to the question about blood tests. So yes to everything you said. There is the Bredesen protocol and the RECODE report. I'm partners in a Bredesen clinic here in Edina. So we have a very large dementia population. We do a lot of this. I get to see a lot of those results. I would say, I think like Hal gave great advice, sort of shop around, get educated on what's available. If I have a complaint about the Bredesen process, it's a somewhat limited series of tests that are quite expensive. So you pay a premium for the name. So you might be able to shop around and shave a lot off of that. But also, I think it's important to look at some of the testing, because there's testing that they will do that might be good information, but there isn't anything to do about it. And so what we see as practitioners is the disappointment in our patients when they spend the money to do some of that high-end testing, and then we have to say, and there's nothing that you can do about it. So I think it's good to get that education, and whether that's online or talking with a physician who is trained in this area so that they can give you some guidance on the cost side of it, but also what's going to be meaningful to you. Testing is great if you can use it. Testing isn't all that great if you can't use it. Anyways, just some thoughts around testing. Fantastic. So thank you all for making time to come. It's fantastic having you here. We have people and devices. So if you want to try an audiovisual entrainment, if you want to try some transcranial photobiomodulation, I see Jesse in the back is getting the octopus set up. That thing is a trip. If you want to have an experience of what transcranial photobiomodulation is like, sit under that for a minute. You will have a very quick sense of what it's like to have your brain kind of juiced up a little bit. Yeah, it's great. It's one of my favorites. All right. Thank you all.